So recently I saw the new movie Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and I'm pretty into Godzilla. I'd say I'm a Godzilla fan, so I thought I'd do a quick review about it. So just from seeing the trailers for this movie, I kind of thought, I didn't really expect it to be that good just from seeing the first couple trailers. I was like, it looks kind of, it looks like it's gonna have some cool monster fights, and then the human part is just gonna be pointless, and that's how it is with most of these big CGI budgets. But it was. I think it was a little bit better than I thought it would be going into it. But the thing I think, and I've been thinking about this a lot recently, the thing about these like big CGI movies where the eye candy is just like giant monsters fighting each other or giant robots fighting each other, or just a need to put CGI around a lot of the aspects to make it entertaining, is that oftentimes it's a bit of a cash grab in it that you put your somewhat amount of eye candy, high tech, high expensive visuals in it, and then you have like 2/3 of just like pointless human interactions that fill up the other 2/3 of the movie, so you have at least a hour and a half to 2 hour movie. And I really feel like that's really stinky, and it's been really stinky like that these past few years with a lot of movies, especially with the Transformers, the Michael Bay Transformers movies. I think have mostly just been like that, and this movie was definitely like that. I will say though that 2014 Godzilla, I very much enjoyed that movie as compared to Godzilla King of the Monsters and the King Kong movie. Godzilla 2014, I thought, I mean, it could always have more big CGI monster fights. It'd just be more expensive. But for what the fights had in it, I thought they were spectacular to watch. There could always be more of them, but for what was in it, I thought it was very entertaining. And I did think that the human interaction part of Godzilla 2014 was very reasonable. I think the problem is that it's making the human story and the human interactions with the monsters is making that relevant. If you just have like monsters fighting in the background, then you have just these random people that you don't care about trying to escape the city, and they have really nothing to do with Godzilla or anything like that. It's pretty boring, and I think that is what screws up a lot of these big CGI movies is they don't put any thought to like the human characters. They just put it in to fill up time and make it so they have a reasonably like decent length movie, and I really hate it. But I feel like Godzilla 2014 did that pretty well, actually. I definitely liked that more than Godzilla King of the Monsters and King Kong. King Kong, on the other hand, I think 2016 when it was, I thought that was a terrible movie. Other people say that they enjoyed it, and I've heard other people agree with me saying it was terrible. I really didn't think any of the big CGI monster fight scenes in that were all that great as compared to just other big CGI fights I've seen over the years. I thought it was, very flawed, and a lot of it just didn't really make any sense. A portion of it is obviously not going to make sense because, they're giant monsters fighting each other. There's not a whole lot of, realisticness to that, but I think the parts that you can't, there's a lot of parts that you can point out that don't really make much sense. And the human interaction in that movie seemed really useless, very just stupid. A lot of them are actually like actors from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I think is a little weird, but it's okay, it's whatever. It wasn't like the actor's fault or just bad acting. It was just bad writing with, just the interacting, the involvement of humans in the monsters, them going to Kong Skull Island. They didn't really have much connection with King Kong. It didn't really, I just thought that was a terrible movie. I thought that was a waste of time and a waste of a King Kong movie. I honestly thought it was going to be pretty good going into it, but it just turned out to be crap for me. Now, the previous King Kong movie that they had, I don't even remember when it was. I think it was like 1998, or I can't even remember when it was. But it was way earlier, maybe like between like 1998 and 2005. I feel dumb. I can't remember when it was, but it had Jack Black in it, and that King Kong movie I felt was so much better than this newer King Kong movie. I just thought the human involvement and the monster fights were just so much better. The King Kongs are totally different. Like this King Kong in the Jack Black movie was just like a super big gorilla, and it fights T-Rexes, and they end up capturing it and taking it to the U.S. to use in a show, whereas this other King Kong is just this massive, just fucking monkey, and they don't sedate him at all. It's they never capture him or even have a chance of capturing him. And he's on Skull Island the entire time fighting these underground demon skull crusher things, I think they call them. And I didn't think the skull crushers were that bad for being like the villain monster. I just would have rather just seen straight up big T-Rexes fight King Kong like I did in the like we saw in the Jack Black movie. I thought that movie was way better than the 2016 King Kong. So moving on to that, the movie I'm more reviewing, Godzilla King of the Monsters. The beginning of the movie, I really enjoyed the beginning of it because it just started happening immediately. They didn't have any bullshit intro. They got right into it. You know, they assumed, which is something kind of annoying that's been happening, is like in movies nowadays, they like assume you've seen the trailer and you know what's going to happen, which is a little annoying because, you know, you shouldn't really do that. You know, the trailers are supposed to hype you up and alert you that the movie's coming out and, you know, pique your interest, not be like an intro to like what's going to happen in the movie. You know, you need to be able to see the movie and still understand it without seeing the trailers, which is something I think a lot of movies have been doing wrong lately. But I did very much enjoy the beginning of it because I did know what was going on. The main characters that were introduced very early on, and I felt they were a bit rushed, but it wasn't really too big of a deal because they weren't the main focus. And throughout majority of the movie, I thought to myself, you know, these human characters actually have like a decent involvement in like what's going on here. I mean, throughout the movie, they do have a decent involvement with Godzilla and the monsters, but I felt like the writing for these characters was really bad. It just, all the characters seemed really aggressive and anxious the entire time, and they all knew what exactly was happening the entire time, well, except for the kind of twist that happened in the middle of it. But besides that, it just seemed really aggressive and unbelievable. Something I really didn't like that happened in the movie is just how they mentioned King Kong and Skull Island in Godzilla King of the Monsters. They mentioned him like once or twice, but he had no involvement in the movie. They didn't really talk about Skull Island or King Kong. They just mentioned him briefly, but King Kong wasn't in the movie at all. The Skull Crushers weren't in the movie at all. You know, Skull Island wasn't in the movie at all. It was just mentioned, like thrown in there. Like, you made a whole movie like 3 years ago, you know, about King Kong and Skull Island in the same universe on purpose for a reason, but he just was just not in the movie at all except for being mentioned, and that really irritated me. Something I enjoyed about the movie, though, was this is just one really specific part, is where they mentioned how King Ghidorah isn't a part of Earth's, you know, ecosystem or whatever. He's not from Earth. He's an alien that came to Earth to try to take over Earth and take over all the Titans and fight Godzilla for dominance. I really like that they brought that up instead of just, you know, not talking about how Ghidorah is an alien, you know, the original story of, you know, King Ghidorah versus Godzilla. I did think Rodan and Mothra were done very well in this movie, though. I think Rodan was very cool to watch emerge from that volcano and then had that mini brawl with King Ghidorah, and then he pretty much became King Ghidorah's bitch. And then Mothra came in the final fight scene and helped out Godzilla and sacrificed herself for Godzilla. And also the part where they went underwater to find Godzilla after he got beaten up by that bomb that was supposed to kill King Ghidorah but ended up nearly killing Godzilla. The part where they went down there to restore him with that nuke was very interesting, but it dragged out like a big chunk of the movie, which was irritating. How it was it was interesting. It was fun to watch, but I rather it would have been filled with like fight scenes of the monsters instead of just kind of like, you know, building the lore around Godzilla, which is interesting, which kind of leads to another point that irritates me. I'll mention later, but it was entertaining to watch. It just took a big chunk out of what could have been monster fights, which irritated me. So I mentioned I really liked the beginning of this movie, but after kind of the part where they revived Godzilla, honestly, the final fight between Godzilla and King Ghidorah was kind of boring to me, honestly. I mean, it really wasn't all that many like cool like moves that these giant titans were whipping out. you know, and it seemed like Godzilla just kind of let King Ghidorah get the jump on him a couple times, you know, when he was supposed to be all powered up. But I think the fight between Rodan and Mothra was way cooler, honestly. Um, but overall, it was an entertaining fight. I just think it could have been better, and they obviously could have had more of it to add to the intensity of the movie. But you know, it's just more CGI costing to do. The part where kind of just the very end where Godzilla clapped King Ghidorah, I honestly didn't like that part all that much because it wasn't really. I feel like it wasn't like a signature thing to Godzilla. You know, Godzilla's signature thing is just brute strength and then firing this giant blue Kamehameha beam out of his mouth, and instead he like turned into like this creature infused with like high radiation. It looked like he looked like a volcano about to erupt, and he launched like an explosion wave from like Dragon Ball Z, and it kind of just attacked like the whole city. And then he walked up to King Ghidorah, stepped on him, and then blew up again. And I don't know, I didn't really feel like Godzilla in that moment. I don't like how Godzilla was glowing red instead of blue. I'd rather it have been blue, and like he would have just done some shit where like he bit him and then blew him up with the blue beam, or like ate its head or something, or ripped its heads off with his bare hands or something like that. Something a bit more brutal and just more Godzilla. Like him just walking up to King Ghidorah, stepping on him and exploding was. I mean, it was still entertaining to watch. It was still cool, but I mean, like, I feel like it could have been more Godzilla-ish to his features. So onto this like thoughts after this movie that I kind of want to talk about in a different section, kind of is kind of just the idea of like this movie. You know, what we have leading up to this is just Godzilla 2014 and King Kong 2016, which in my eyes is really wrong because Godzilla versus King Ghidorah is supposed to be like the pinnacle of Godzilla. This, or like the Godzilla universe, is supposed to be like the end of it all. You know, all the other Titans should have been like introduced. We should have known the whole roster. And then here's when the big badass himself, King Ghidorah, arrives, and then Godzilla needs to show you what he's made of. You know, this is where Godzilla starts to struggle and actually fight something that he might not be able to handle on his own type of shit. And I really feel like it's a lot of lost potential having this movie so early. I really would have rather, you know, they had that part where they had all these Titans emerging around the Earth, and they were, you know, serving King Ghidorah, and that was cool and all. It just, you know, we didn't know the names of like half of them. I'm pretty sure they made up a large portion of them. I have no idea who that mammoth elephant fucking gorilla thing with the tusks was. I have no idea what that was. They had like just a Muto there, and then they had some like weird spider bug thing that was crawling around. I have no idea what those are. I think they showed the turtle guy. I don't remember what his name is, but they showed the turtle guy. Gamera is the name of the turtle, and the Jack Black movie was in 2005, the King Kong movie. I just had to look that up real quick because I forgot. But yeah, seeing all those Titans, you know, getting introduced in that movie but not being named is a little weird to me because, you know, this is supposed to be Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, Godzilla, King of the Monsters. You know, I feel like these monsters should already be introduced. You know, how are you going to have a movie for those separate monsters if you've already had, you know, God versus God, King Ghidorah versus Godzilla? I just feel like it's a lot of lost potential. They could have worked up, they could have made more movies, you know, year after year, you know, making a, you know, they make the Godzilla movie 2014, they make a King Kong movie, you know, a better movie, and then they make a Mothra movie, they make a Rodan movie talking about Rodan, and then they have, you know, Gamera versus Godzilla, you know, things adding up to Godzilla versus King Ghidorah like they did originally way back then. And I just feel like that's a lot of lost potential. And when I'm counting up all like the creature, I think they said there were 17 monsters total. At one point they said there were like 17 Titans total. And as I was counting them up, like I didn't really even know which ones to count. Whether I counted the Mutos, the original Mutos, or the new Muto that showed up, or the or if I counted King Kong, or if I counted the monster that King Kong fought. You know, I felt like that was a little flimsy. And I was adding it up, and as I added all of them up, I'm like, okay, well, they're probably counting that one. They're probably not counting that one, but they're probably counting these ones. You know, even counting up the ones that they didn't name throughout the movie, I think they're still missing like 2 or 3 monsters that just weren't shown in the movie or mentioned the name of. So I think we're missing a couple. So Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah is originally supposed to be the pinnacle of it, that or like the Mecha Godzilla, but I doubt they'll make a movie about that. If they do, they could, and it could be cool, but I kind of doubt they will. You know, at this point, I feel like they're just gonna make up the rest of the story how they want to do it, which I am totally fine with them making new content and making their whole new story that isn't pertaining to the original Godzilla timeline. That's totally cool. I just think it's a little weird for them to go Godzilla 2014, King Kong 2016, and then Godzilla King of the Monsters. You know, if what they make next, you know, I feel like if King Ghidorah isn't in any of the next movies, it's gonna be, you know, a little lame. I just feel like that's lost potential. And the post scene credit is just Tywin Lannister going like, hey, we have one of the King Ghidorah heads, and I'm like, I wonder how the fuck you got that, because didn't Godzilla like explode him? Did he just throw that head off into the distance for you or something? But you know, he had it, and I'm like, what the fuck are they gonna do with it? You know, it's you know, it's interesting. It's interesting, and it makes it look like King Ghidorah is gonna come back. But why would they have King Ghidorah come back when they just had Godzilla totally destroy him? And this is basically like a Godzilla King Ghidorah movie. Why would they, you know, have another movie of King Ghidorah? You know, unless they're setting up for way in the future. But I kind of doubt it, because they went 2014, 2016, then 2019 with this big jammer, which just seemed out of place. So I really don't know where they're going with it. So I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if they just gave up and didn't make any more with how bad the reviews for Godzilla King of the Monsters really was. And to be honest, when I see the reviews and other reviews on YouTube about like what people think about Godzilla King of the Monsters, I honestly think they're way too harsh on it. You know, I think the big trigger was just I feel like the battles were like a little lackluster in this movie. Definitely entertaining, but a little lackluster. And just the writing for the characters was so awkward and aggressive. That's kind of what killed the human interactions. But the humans, I felt, again, did kind of have a relevant interaction with Godzilla and the other monsters. You know, there's the ones who awakened him. They're the ones who, you know, gave Godzilla the nuke and revived him. They're the ones who kind of fought with Godzilla a little bit in the end. They used the orca to do a bunch of wacky shit, you know. That was pretty interesting. I thought the involvement of the humans and the monsters was, you know, decent. It was okay. I mean, the writing, on the other hand, was just not very good. I felt like that was the part that really dragged that down, and also the monster fights could have been better, and obviously could have had more of them. Also, the wife in this movie pulled a total Thanos on everybody, and was just like, oh, we need to do something to cause destruction and loss of life and shit because there's not enough resources. We're destroying our planet. We're a plague. The monsters are gonna... Earth is an organism, and its immune system is the Titans, and they need to cleanse us. And it's like, well, you're the one who kind of released King Ghidorah and made all that shit happen, so aren't you kind of like the initiator of that immune system right there? You know, she'd pull a total Thanos, and I think pulling a Thanos is, you know, it's a very interesting concept, and I feel like a lot of movies are just doing that now because of the excessive success of Infinity War and just the MCU. And I feel like people are going to overuse that, and it's going to quickly become boring, which is really going to shit on my day, because I really like that concept, but you really have to kind of use it sparingly, because there's a point at which it makes sense, and there's a point at which it's just dumb. And the wife lady in this movie was just dumb, because her literal whole plan was just, hey, let's release a bunch of fucking monsters and cause a bunch of death and destruction. That's not really going to help anybody in any sort of way. Sure, she'll destroy some cities and they'll look like a fucking apocalypse, but I mean, like, where are we gonna go from that? Are the monsters gonna just take over the world and we're gonna have to like cater to them or whatever? It really just wasn't very solid. And she pulled that type of like weak villain shit where like she did it and then immediately fucking regretted it. Like, that's so fucking stupid. Like, stick to what you're doing. Even if it went wrong, you still have to stick to what you did. You know, she literally just fucking released and was like, ah, fuck, I fucked up. You know, I was just on a power high right there, and I realized I shouldn't have done it, and now I need everyone's help and forgiveness to stop it. And that's just super stupid, weak villain shit. And also, the military character, Tywin Lannister, I felt was also just... I really thought he was going to have more involvement in the movie when I saw the trailers, but he hardly had any lines, honestly. He didn't do much in the movie. He kind of just randomly agreed with the wife in that they should just cause destruction, and didn't even like express his own motives. He was just kind of there to, fuel the background, and that just felt really dumb and useless. So in the end, if I were to rate this as like a standalone movie, I'd probably give it about a 7 out of 10. I really don't think it's nearly as bad as everyone's saying it is. People really like to rip on these movies who have like, quote, pointless human interaction, and just like, people are all debating right now like how much should humans be in these movies, and I'm like, it's honestly a cash grab. Every movie really is, down to the core of it. It's to make money, and they had this piece of eye. They have a third of it have eye candy, 2/3 of it pointless human interaction. They try to make it good. They try to make it somewhat reasonable, as opposed to other movies who just like throw it in there for no fucking reason, and that's annoying. But I felt like this movie and these movies are really trying to make the human interaction meaningful, but end up having aggressive, weird, awkward, bad writing. So overall, I would give this like a 7 out of 10 for a standalone movie. For me, in my opinion, at the end, as I'm like thinking about it in my head, I really don't want to give it that bad of a score, because I really felt like it tried, and it was an entertaining movie. I'd recommend you'd see it if you like monster movies. Obviously, if you don't like seeing monsters on the big screen, don't go see it, because that's what it is. Otherwise, it's boring if you don't enjoy that part. But for me, I'd probably rate it like between like a 5.5 and a 6. Partially just because I wanted to see more monster fights. The human interactions were a little annoying. Also, just I really felt like there's a lot of lost potential in that they randomly introduced these monsters, missed a couple monsters. King Kong got brought up for no reason, and the King Kong movie was a sham. I really didn't like that. Just a whole lot of lost potential in that Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah is supposed to be the pinnacle of this universe, and they did it now after 2 movies, and it didn't really make much sense to do it now. And like I said, the beginning of the film I thought was very entertaining. It had really nice pacing, a little accelerated, but it was still good. I felt like the dad character in this movie was really just overly aggressive and weird. I didn't really like him very much. Obviously that actor did a great job, but just the writing and the situation and the vibe around the whole thing, he seemed like way out of place, in my opinion. I am excited though to see what they do next in this universe, if they're gonna keep going in with it at all. I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't. It's really kind of a coin toss to see what random thing they come up with next. But that's all for now. Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments section what you think of this movie. I'd love to read it and know what you guys think. And thanks for listening. Yep. See ya.